I've sat with athletes who are in tears because they want to be good. They know they've been good, but now they just feel like they've hit this wall and they don't know how to pick up their performance or how to feel confident again. Being able to show them the tools, they're like instantly able to kind of like feel back into their confident self, right? I feel like 10 or 15 years ago, people were like, just get better, just get back on the ice, just forget it, just swallow your emotions, it doesn't matter. Where today, there's a bigger conversation around the topic.
I had a very, very mediocre, below average college career because I couldn't control my nerves. And hopefully this will help a ton of the players that we represent and players that just listen in on a weekly basis. It's something that, if you haven't realized by now, is an underrated skill.
Amy, thank you for joining us today. I'll give a brief intro and then I'll turn it over to you. But, Flow State Unleashed, you are primarily helping athletes really from the mental side. And it's not just mixed martial arts or fighters. It's from our side of it, hockey players. You work with some of our folks. But I thought it was really important that we get your brand out there and just share kind of what's out there for folks. I think mental coaching is far more, in the forefront for athletes now and parents and families, but maybe understanding what the benefits are, how to think through it. What is a session like? All these things, people are probably afraid to ask sometimes. And so we figured what a great opportunity for our listeners and our families to, hear it firsthand from somebody who's doing it and I know is doing very well with it in regards to how the athletes are responding.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to be on the podcast and be able to share what Flow State Unleashed is all about, because I feel like for a lot of athletes, they just don't know how to handle the emotions that come up with the sport and how to regulate it fast enough so they stop spiraling down and then learn how to lock in quicker, right? Because sometimes things can happen with these athletes, and if they don't know how to redirect their focus, then they can get lost in the drama of it, right? And now they're focusing on things that maybe aren't in their control, or maybe they can, let go of, so that they can redirect everything on what matters right here, right now, right?
Yeah. So that's probably a good place to start. So how often is an athlete coming to you maybe in crisis, like they feel like they've spiraled so far, or how often do you see athletes coming to you prior to that? What is the mix? What's the typical thing that you see where, okay, a family's reached out, an athlete's reached out, here's where we're starting from?
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. I think it also depends on how perceptive the parent is on picking up issues that might be happening with the kids, right? If these kids have been spiraling year over year and now they feel like they want to quit their sport, they've been spiraling down for a while, right? And they don't have the tools to learn how to redirect themselves. And I do get that often. I've sat with athletes who are in tears because they want to be good. They know they've been good, but now they just feel like they've hit this wall and they don't know how to pick up their performance or how to feel confident again in what they're doing. And I actually love working with that type of athlete because being able to show them the tools, they're instantly able to kind of feel back into their confident self. So
what do you usually see as turnaround time for somebody who's really down in the dumps, that lost all confidence, whether that's because of play, an injury, a coach? Is it something that's pretty quick on average, or it takes longer based on the different types of players?
Yeah, it depends. It also depends on the individual. I'm sure you've seen it with some of the athletes you work with. You could tell them everything, and then if they're not implementing, if they don't want to try, then obviously that's where they're at. However, most of the clients, I'd say 99% of the athletes that I work with, I've seen the change after even one session, right? They walk away with the tools that I provide after the first session, and they feel a lot better. I use a different tools when I work with them, a mixture of NLP, hypnosis, and just mental tool training, just different visualization aspects, learning how to elicit specific states and helping them walk through feeling that confidence so they see it and they feel it right away. Okay. And then it takes I'd say after the 3 sessions, then the parents start seeing it on the ice and the coaches start actually seeing it. So when their performance starts being recognized by the coaches, you know what I mean? When it starts to perceive on the ice, then you know that, you know, other people are catching on to it as well.
You're not going to see it translate immediately. It takes practice to actually like put these things together, and especially from a mental side, right? Like, cool, I could go through a couple sessions and you're giving me kind of a tool base, right? Like a set of things to use, but maybe putting those together and then recognizing, because a lot of those moments of stress or anxiety, at least for me as an athlete, it came in the moment, right? There were things that were building up, right? And then you start piling and stacking those expectations. But it really, to me, like when I was playing, it felt like it would just, something would trigger it, right? Like I was already maybe stressed going into a game, and then something triggers it. Like I give up a goal early or something to that effect. And then having that tool, but like I didn't have a mental coach, so I didn't know like what can I reference, what can I go back to maybe like recenter myself quickly. I had to maybe do that work a lot in my own time after. And by then it's probably too late. But do you see like, yeah, I guess the question and the follow-up there is how, like, are kids using this, and then are they coming back to be like, I used it this weekend?
They do use the tools, and then they're like, wow, that actually really worked in helping me get in the moment. But I'd say there's also like, actually just got an email yesterday from somebody who was in their league last year, and their coach like over-shamed them, like as a team as a whole, right? Like just came down on everybody so hard, would bench people from it, like, and just like it was over the top. But now this year he's playing out of fear of making the mistakes and having that same reaction happen again, right? So now that fear is carrying over season. So how do we then step? Yeah, new team, new coach, right? But that's how the subconscious works, right? Like you have these fears kind of integrated into yourself. So now he's performing with the same fears as last year, thinking the same thing's going to happen. And that's a lot of what happened. I think you mentioned, like, as an athlete, some things don't happen until in that moment. So some triggers like that can pop up where now we're triggering this emotion or this fear that was from last year. And that's a lot of what I work with athletes as well, is finding those triggers and getting rid of them.
And in a situation like this where it's from last year, do you get involved with his current coach to fill him in on what's going on and work with the coach on how he can better support the player to get rid of these triggers?
Yeah, definitely. I've had the conversations with parents, with coaches, and every team is different. Obviously, I'm just starting to work with this athlete, so I'll see how involved I can get. But I've definitely worked with all the different layers in the athlete's team that is working with them, for sure. I'd say most people are like, they want to learn. They want to know how to communicate with people. They want the athletes to be the best versions of themselves. And that's how you know you're working with like a good team around you.
Do you find a lot of the coaches reaching out, like after you've started working with an athlete, is the coach engaging with you more on maybe not just one-on-one, like how do I support the athlete, but maybe have you found coaches reaching out to you like, hey, how can I be better at engaging in some of these instances? Or is that still a bridge that we're trying to cross, like maybe as a society? And I say this because Steph deals with it, I deal with it, right? As advisors, we're there for the athlete, but we talk to the coaches, and sometimes it's harder. Like you can tell someone may be ingrained in some older ways. And you hear a lot of like the idioms of like, he just doesn't get it, or he's not bought in. And so I guess, do you have coaches reaching out to you a lot? Like after working with your athletes, where they're trying, like, okay, give me some tricks now, because I see it.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't had a lot of conversations with the specific coaches specifically. I'd love to, though. However, I have had there was a team, like a whole team, like, I don't, what do you call them, a franchise or whatever. There was a team, and they wanted all their coaches trained by Flow State Unleashed. And that was probably one of my favorite group team sessions, is working with this entire team. There was like 17 or 20 coaches in this room, and they were so receptive. They want to learn. They want to know how to coach in this day and age, because they understand that the game today is different than how it was when they played, right? I feel like 10 or 15 years ago, people were like, just get better, just get back on the ice, just forget it, just swallow your emotions, it doesn't matter. Where today, there's a bigger conversation around the topic. And I loved how that team of coaches, they wanted to learn and they wanted to evolve.
And it's funny you say that, because it reminds me when I was playing juniors, 10 years ago. I'm not that old. Might be 10. It might be 10. I had first taken a personality assessment so our coach could have a better idea of what type of person we are and how we respond compared to others. That was the first time I had ever seen a type of, I want to say, mental assessment or coaching that involved the players on the team so that he can properly coach us. Nowadays, things have changed, like you mentioned. Can you walk us through kind of what your process is when you start working with an athlete? From how do you start with them? What do you kind of do?
Yeah, 100%. So I start with a performance assessment, and it's really great for them to basically assess themselves. How do they approach their sport? When does the breakdown start? What parts of the game do they carry on their shoulder, whether it be like worrying about what others are thinking or putting too much fear or self-sabotaging even. So it's a really good starting point for them to basically do a self-assessment. And then from there, I just have a conversation with them. One of the first things I also do when I do one-on-one calls is something called a know your signal lights. And it's just a way for me to assess what their red performance is. And this is their shutdown. And yellow is like when they're starting to get in their head, starting to like, you know, get a little ungrounded. And then green is like their like flow state. Like this is where we perform our best. And it's interesting because like a lot of athletes, they have different yellow and red zones. Like some people's yellow zones, they start getting like panicky and start rushing because they're trying to catch up. Or some people get like really in their head and really quiet and like start to spiral down. And then red zones, some athletes are quick to anger. They're just quick to frustrate. And then others are just, you know, they start to heavily nitpick. They're starting to really get down on themselves. So it's interesting to like do that full assessment with them to see, okay, what's your green, yellow, and red zone? And then what are we doing to constantly try to move back to your green zone? Knowing that when we play, our lights are constantly going to be changing. We're going to be going from green to yellow to red, green, yellow, all because there's so many emotions in sport, right? Like we're like riding this wave, but the key is to be finding that focus, that awareness of to what we're focusing on and switching back to green as quickly as possible.
And working with hockey players, have you seen consistent triggers based on position? Is there, or is it really just different per person?
I'd say it's different per person, and it does change, right? Like it's just going to change based off like coaches' feedback as well. Lately, I've actually had a lot of people telling me that where they're struggling is like hesitating. So they'll get that like hesitation once it switches from like offense to defense, then they have to like switch and then they feel that exhaustion, right? So I don't know I know you guys are both goalie, but that's been coming up so much this week. So there's that, there's fear in there's fear in receiving hits and giving hits. Sometimes even just like missing a shot, like trying to get a goal and missing it and like turning it over, that could be their downfall. Oftentimes it's too much focus on the score. So if their team feels like they're losing, then they just kind of give up on the team and like right away. Like, I don't know, there's that whole like mental barrier there.
Like we watch film with our guys and there's moments like we'll go through and do video, and a lot of these coaches that are working with our players are doing video as well, but maybe they do it in a team setting or like a one-on-one video, depending on, you know, what that coach's assignment is. It could be maybe like once every 2 or 3 months, right? Just depending on how they operate. But you see these moments happen, and it's very interesting. You bring up like the transition piece, and we see that, or at least I see that with a lot of guys who are, well, I'm an offensive forward, right? They build an identity that is very like, this is my game. Well, yeah. To move on to the next level, to keep progressing, you have to have a well-rounded game. And most scouts are looking for that. Even so, if you're the guy who's scoring 3 points a game, you can get away with that for a while. But at some point, whether it's college, pros, whatever, someone's going to say, you need to play the other side of the puck or I can't play you. And so It's really interesting that you're seeing this with athletes where, in transition, I've moved from my state of flow and I'm most confident because I'm on attack, right? And now I'm like, oh, I'm playing defense. And so with a kid like that, are you working with, and I'm using this as a specific instance because I think this is really interesting. Like I see this with guys who like, okay, now we're playing defense. To them, defense is like a passive state almost. I'm like, no. The best defenses are aggressive. Like It's the same mentality. What do you want? What's the best defense? Offense. You want the puck. So if we're aggressive, if we're calculated in that aggressiveness, whether it's closing guys early, killing plays, like you can be confident in that because I know you can do that because you do that to get the puck when you're in F1. Do you see, like, I guess all of that is to say, do you go into some of those weeds with them, or are you staying more, I don't want to say like 10,000 foot view, but like when you're in a session, are you getting into details, or do you watch film with some guys like, hey, like could a player come to you and like, hey, here's where at this moment I've changed. I could see it. I felt it. Everything happened in that moment. Like, do you get into the weeds at that level, or are you staying like, I guess I don't want to say on the periphery a little bit, but
yeah, no, I get really detailed with them. And because part of visualization, there's three parts of it. One is to kind of visualize the state you want to be in. There's another one that helps you learn to skills faster. So I will ask athletes specifically, like, what are you trying to learn? Like, what are you trying to improve? And I worked with one athlete last week who was trying to like get his slap shot. He was doing like an out motion. But it was like kind of taking away the power of it to like just pulling it back more towards his body. Anyways, so I do like full visualizations on that, because if you can mentally rehearse these skills in our mind, then your nervous system and your body knows how to implement it in live action. So it kind of shrinks the learning curve when you're trying to implement a new skill or refine a skill. I also use specific visualizations to help overcome hesitations and fear on the ice, right? Because I'll put them in that situation. I'll help them elicit that fear that they feel, and I'll show them, okay, what steps or resets are we doing to help kind of move past that quicker? And it has such a huge positive outcome, because they start like learning these skills, overcoming these barriers, and becoming more confident because they're getting the mental reps in earlier. So yeah, we get really detailed with them depending on what they're trying to learn and do with their game.
So I have a bit of a question on that one, and this is going to relate back to when I played years ago again. My goalie coach had trained me to visualize quite a bit before a game, sit there and go through the motions of what felt good, what made me confident. And I would do that 30, 45 minutes a day, every day, and including on game day. Yet when I got on the ice, I still felt extremely nervous, to the point where you would see my hands shaking. Mm-hmm. Is there something I could have done more in that situation, or something I could have done differently to help avoid that or help keep me calm? Because I see that with goalies that I'm working with now, and I try to explain them that visualization comes and it keeps you confident, it keeps you feeling good, but some of them are still extremely nervous as soon as they step on the ice.
Yeah, so anxiety is probably one of my favorite topics, because that's something that I've struggled with a lot, especially with jiu-jitsu, but like even day-to-day life. So with like pregame nerves and the jitters and visualization. So they're kind of like two separate conversations. When you're visualizing, you really want to make sure you're dipping into the feelings and the emotions you feel, right? And trying to get like really specific with your visualization. So yeah, we can visualize like making the shot, like making the save, blocking, rebounding, everything, right? But what emotions are you riding in those moments? The second thing is when you are feeling those pregame jitters, when you're walking out onto the ice, it's like kind of accepting them and understanding like your body is going into this like fight and flight response. You're like going into something, you're going to prepare, but that's your body preparing, your adrenaline's increasing. So there's a reason why these nerves are there. So instead of like trying to push them away and be like, oh my God, I'm nervous. This is a horrible feeling. This is bad. I'm anxious. It's kind of being like, I'm getting ready. Like I'm getting excited. I'm getting pumped. This is the adrenaline. My body's getting ready, knowing that on the other side of this, you're going to perform really well. But then there's another layer to that, being like, okay, how can we actually reduce it? If it feels too much, if our hands are shaking, how can I ground myself right now and quickly? And that just comes trying to get back into your body as quickly as possible. How does your feet feel in your skates? How do your hands feel in your gloves? Like really getting into your body, trying to ground your energy as quickly as possible, getting into your senses, hearing things, feeling things, smelling things. And yeah, there's so many other strategies that I can give an athlete, especially if they're feeling anxious. But yeah, there's a couple. There's before reframing and then grounding. So
the grounding sounds like it's really sensory based, like, or is it like recognizing things around you? Like you said, smell based for a hockey player, probably not the one you want to do, but I'm sure there's some weirdos that like that. The goalies, it's like, I'm just a bag of stink right now.
Yeah. I'm just like,
oh no, we're here. I'm present.
Yeah.
But is is there something tied to like sense and those the five that helps us ground? Because like you hear a lot of techniques, typically it's like box breathing. Okay, well that's breath, that's an awareness, right? Being there. Visualization, well, not visualization, but what do they call it? Like visual leveling. It's like so one thing I would do is like I almost try to take snapshots, and you see a lot of goalies do this, right? The active eyes when they're preparing, but in like I would do it to reset myself sometimes, like okay, like something near, something far, like, and just kind of get my eyes reoriented sometimes, like that helped. Is it tied to sense, or is it's like, no, that's just a way to do it. It's not necessarily like that's the secret. And if this is a trade secret, we'll obviously tell people you want the real answer, we'll get you a link and get you signed up with Amy. But
it's honestly just trying to get back into your body. Like with anxiety, when we're starting to worry and get in our head, we're not present. We're not in our body. Like, when you're like driving your car and you get to your destination, you're like, I don't even remember like half the drive. Do you ever get that? You're just like spaced out. You're just like, you know what I mean? Like that's you not really being present in the drive. Like you've kind of just like zoned out. You're unconsciously conscious at this point, right? Like you're so, but that's kind of like what I mean by not in your body. So if you actually drive fully present in your car, you're like gripping the steering wheel, you're listening to the music, you're watching, you're fully present, paying attention, right? And it's the same thing when you're on the ice and when you're preparing. If you're starting to like stress and worry and like spiral about like things are going to happen and like, oh my gosh, you're not in your body. Just like that same example. So anything that you're doing, the thing where you're saying the rapid eye movement, trying to really visually see what's around you, feeling what's on you, like you're pulling back your senses back into your body. So, and breathing for sure, like, deep belly breathing, it'll activate your parasympathetic nervous system, right? Like your vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve takes up 90% of your parasympathetic nervous system. So anything we can do to activate that, whether it be like pull your ears, massage your neck, belly breathing, box breathing, all of that's going to start activating it and help you get into that different nervous system. So
there's so much that I didn't know about this that I wish I did when I was playing, because I would tell you to have a great game, and the next game I couldn't stop a beach ball, not to save my life. And I had a very, very mediocre, below average college career because I couldn't control my nerves. Could not stay confident.
The nerves are big, right? Like I felt them so much with my jujitsu comps, and like with my anxiety, I actually went through a period of time where I couldn't leave my house because I was so anxious, right? Like I couldn't go into stores, lineups, like everything. And then one day I was like, you know what? I want to try jujitsu, and it really helped me like get into my body, ground me, reduce my anxiety. And then one day I was like, I want to compete. So I went from like not leaving my house to like signing up for a jujitsu competition. Oh my gosh, my nerves were. I was shaking. I think after my first match, I was like, I had to cry because my adrenaline dump was just so intense, and it was a lot. And then I was like, okay, I have to figure this out, and it became a problem for me to solve, because I was like, I know that when I'm in practice, I am great at jujitsu. I feel confident. I feel strong. And then as soon as you put me into that competition setting, I completely fell apart. So it's not me. It's not my abilities. It's my nerves. So that's kind of why I started this program, or kind of where it came from, because I was obsessed with learning how to overcome this problem. Like I wanted to win. I wanted to feel confident on the mats. So I found all these tools that worked, and I won some comps, and it helped so much.
So do you find yourself working more with like individual athletes or team athletes? Do you have like a mix of it, and is there anything that you see predominantly that's different between those two athletic subsets? Like a lot of hockey players will play golf or tennis, right? Or they're doing martial arts, which I actually had a couple goalies that did that, or did gymnastics as well. Right. But do you see like with your book of business, do you see kind of a split, and do you notice any like key differences between how like an individualized athlete centers versus maybe a team athlete?
So right now it's funny because obviously my background being jujitsu, I thought most of the people I'd work with would be jujitsu, but the area I'm in is predominantly hockey. Like hockey is such a huge industry. So I work probably like 90% of the athletes I work with are hockey, which means they're team athletes, but they do sometimes also have that other sport, right? Like I've worked with golfers, I've worked with basketball players, volleyball's team, but and I have worked with a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes. It's just predominantly hockey. I do work with a lot of actual teams too. So, and I don't see, I don't really see a difference. Like obviously there's a different dynamic with team players because they have to deal with teams. They have to deal with interpersonal relations, right? Yeah, conflict resolution, right? Like their coaches are making the calls. There's team dynamics, opponent, like everything, right? Where if you have a jiu-jitsu athlete, it's themselves. They're literally, I know you're fighting an opponent, but you're really fighting your mind in that point because you have to overcome your own nerves and show up. So there is a difference in that respect. However, at the end of the day, it's just learning how to overcome emotion, redirect your focus, come back into what you do best, and redirect yourself back to that green performance zone. So,
do you find yourself working with a certain age group of hockey players right now, or is it really a mix from all levels?
It's a mix. I'd say it's really popular around, like I do work with a lot of like 8 to 10, and then it does get a little more popular around 14-year-olds when they start getting a little more aggressive in that age group. I think that's when it happens, 14. Mm-hmm. And then, a lot of kids around 16 to 18, that junior level. And then I'd say, the most is around the junior level. But it is mixed. It's honestly mixed. Like I think a lot of parents are wanting these kids to learn these tools at a younger age. And I think it's smart because they're going to grow up having these strategies as they're going to school and growing older and stuff.
I'm kind of surprised, I guess. Yeah, surprised that like the 8 to 10, but I guess it makes sense.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised too, only because like, I know hockey is a competitive sport, and I've heard that around 12 or 13 it starts to get dialed up. But some of the kids that I've worked with at 8 or 9, they take it just as seriously and they're just as devoted as a 16-year-old, and they have just as many tournaments, and it's travel hockey, like it's intense. And I'm like, dude, like so. I'm always shocked.
Do you have to push back on the parents sometimes and just say like, hey, here's a realistic expectation. Like, yes, it's great that you want your 8-year-old, your 9-year-old to have these skills, but also they're, and this is really, the timing's funny on this. Hockey think tank, Topher Scott, he just had a clip go out that's, I think, kind of going viral within the hockey community. He's talking with a D1 coach, and somebody's asking the D1 coach for tips on like, they talk about basically like an elite 8-year-old. And we see this a lot. We get people who reach out to us like, hey, we have a tournament for 8-year-olds. Like, we're not working with that age group, right? Like, that's a kid who should be having fun. You should be like learning and growing. And like the irony of an elite 8-year-old, like the coach basically goes like, they're 8. They're not elite at anything. They suck at everything. They're supposed to be bad at everything. Like they like, that's what it is. You're a child. Like, you're not supposed to be elite. So I find it interesting. Like, do you have to push back maybe on parents a little bit, or like set some boundaries, or like, is there a lot of expectation setting for that age group of, hey, we're building some things, but your kid's in a rapid growth phase, right? Like 8 to 10 developmentally, like the male brain at that age is mush.
Yeah. And honestly, sometimes I think like at 8, they don't have a lot of the awareness that an older kid would do, right? So if I'm trying to do like goal setting and stuff, they're like, I don't know, I want to go to school. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's just different. It's different. So I do it. Okay. I want to do good. Yeah. I want to skate fast. Like, it's just very like basic. So I do adjust my program for them because I can give them a lot of tools, and it really depends on the individual. And it's just the same as like really any age. It's like, I can give you as much as possible. And I explain this to the parents. I'm like, maybe they're not suitable for my long full season program, but maybe it's good for like the 3 sessions where I can give them tools. The parent can have tools. I can do a parent session so that everybody can be on board and helping to, learn these strategies. So I go at it from just a different angle. Like, it's the same stuff. I just present it a little bit differently.
No, I think that makes sense, right? Like, and that would have been yeah, probably the follow-up question is how much are they owning it, or like you're asking the parent to own it versus like a 16, 18-year-old. And we talk about this when we take on clients like at that age, and especially the older guys, like, and parents will say this a lot of the time, like we want them to own this, right? Like we are signing up with you guys, and we want to be involved. We want to be, if it was like a racy chart, we want to be informed, right? But we like our kids accountable, and they're responsible for what they're doing in working with you, whether it is, into the coaching pieces or like here's the teams, the goals, here's the things that we're doing. So I guess with a younger, like, do you see that shift out then the 10 to 12? Like at what point do you see athletes self-driving in their experience with you? Is it like 12, 14, you start to kind of see them really own it from a maturity standpoint, or?
Yeah, I'd say I've had such a mixed bag with that group. Honestly, it's a mixed bag. It's like 50-50. I'd say like half of them are like I've had some who, she was in grade 8, she was adorable, and she was so studious and just every week was there and just in it and had stuff to provide. Like we just like there was no end in what I could give her. Like it was amazing. But then I've also had some who show, and they're so hard to open up, and you're like trying to get any piece of information, like any glimmer of like, what are we working on? What do you want to work on? And they're like, so it's a mix, and everybody's different, and that's okay. In those instances, I provide, we go through the program, I can teach one-on-one. But I'd say like around 15, 16, like when we get to that junior level, when they're really driving to get drafted, when they really want to get onto like the OHL or in the NAL, they will try anything. Like they are so dedicated. They care so much. I love working with athletes sometimes because you see that passion in them, especially when it gets to my point, like when they get down to the level of like needing support, then they're like wanting to put in everything, right? Like they've already done nutrition, they've done strength training, they've done skills, they've done private one-on-ones, and now they're doing mental. It's the icing on the cake. It's like the last missing piece. And it's the I think one of the athletes that I was working with for the last like 2 years just got captain of his team. So in the NAL. So I was like, oh my God, you did it. So anyways, yeah, you see them start being self-driven, I guess, at that age when it gets serious.
In your professional opinion, you just said like kind of they're putting the pieces together, and sometimes you're that final piece. Do you think that mindset or that approach is wrong? Maybe not wrong, but like, should athletes be seeking out mental coaching earlier? Or as a building block to then the nutrition to the off ice training? Like, where do you see that fit? Do you see people kind of make a mistake in that? Like,
I'd say from everything that I've learned with myself in jiu-jitsu and like what I teach, you have to think of your performance as an athlete as like a 3-legged stool. You have your skills, like your sport, right? And then you have nutrition, which is so important. If you're not properly fueling and resting and repairing, you're going to fall apart. And then you have mindset. If any one of those things is missing, your stool falls over, right? You need to be putting in all of these different layers. You could do everything, like especially in like my situation with jiu-jitsu. I was training, I was nutrition, I was doing everything. I did not do any work on my mindset. I showed up and I was trash and I cried and I was anxious, right? I started doing the mental performance training, and it's so different. It just rounds everything out, because when you get to those tournaments, when you get to those high pressure situations, if you don't know how to handle those nerves or whatever happens in those situations, then you start spiraling down, and there's nothing there to help spiral you up unless you have the tools. So yeah, on game day, it's like all mindset.
I feel like that's a good way to like just the last piece of advice for everybody is that you need to use all three.
You actually have to, because like, especially as there's so much you're dealing with, there's so much stress, there's life stress, there's everything stress. So like there's a lot. And the thing is too, I think people have a misconception that, it's kind of like therapy, and right. Like, so they kind of shy away from it because they're like, I don't really want to go and talk about my feelings, and I don't want to do this. And it's so different. Like, I talk with people about their feelings and what happened. There's some pieces, but I'm very much honed in on your performance, how it affects your performance, how these nerves are blocking your performance. I want you to like reach your peak performance and like access your flow state. So I'm doing it from a different way. So say, for instance, we go back to like the one, like an athlete who shows up like crying and just like upset and they just want to quit, right? My job is to help them rediscover their strengths and try to like let go of what it is that's bothering them. And I have different ways to help them kind of access those threads. I find sometimes we can, play these movies in our mind of like catastrophizing things and latching on to things that have happened and holding on to these emotions. So if I can show them how to kind of like step out of that with the different tools I use, they're like, it's like instant relief. They're like, oh my God, I didn't know I could feel this good. Right. So it's like, I show them how to walk past that, if that makes sense.
In therapy, right? Sometimes we're there to have like to find our flow state, maybe in relationships or how we operate in our day to day, or like depending on that, what section of that exists and that you're trying to figure out, versus like, well, let's build some pieces. There's a lot of crossover, like tools and building, like I say a toolbox. I say this with goalies all the time, right? Like when I talk to goalies, like we need to build your toolbox. Like you're one dimensional at times. Like there's 10 different ways to make a save, really. Like, how do you do that? So in the same breadth of like, well, there's 10 different ways to probably approach this from a mental, a mental stamina and performance standpoint. Which one's going to work best for you? And a therapist may do it differently versus how you're laying it and mapping it out. But there's crossover, and you might be addressing some of the same things. You're just not addressing it as a therapist, right?
Yeah, 100%. I'm looking at it from a way of like, okay, if that happens, and hold on, I want to just backtrack for 1 second. Toolbox is perfect. I tell all my athletes I work with, I'm just giving you all my tools. Some of the tools might not work for you. That's okay. Yep. Just pick the ones that work for you in any situation. But yeah, so I'm looking at it from a point of like, and I'll do this with my athletes sometimes. So if something's like making them mad or, making them upset, I'm like, okay, let's plan this. We can't avoid things that are hard or going to make you feel uncomfortable in sport. But how are we overcoming that in the moment? How are we moving past that? And it's, like adversity. It's like managing and dealing with adversity and quickly. So mental planning, I'll say like, give me 5 things that will set you off into your red zone. What are 5 things that will just grind your gears, throw you off your game, make you anxious? Like, tell me these things that make you upset, because we can't avoid them. We can't hide from them. We can't pretend like they don't exist. How are we overcoming them? How are we managing them? How are we moving back to our green zone as quickly as possible? So I actually like that exercise as well, because, we're going to be anticipating things that may throw us off the rails, which is going to happen. No, I actually work with a lot of goalies. You guys are a different breed for sure. But I guess one of the things that I do for you guys is I put you guys in your like little mental box, trying to learn how to block out everything, the noise, the distraction around you, and like put you in this like, nothing can touch you. You're just like in this box of like, yeah, it's a good way to like block out the noise, drown out the noise. So I found a lot of sometimes like important people like scouts or parents, when they want to visit your game, they'll like stand right behind your goal post, and then you're like, oh my God, I know they're watching me, but I'm trying to like play my game, right? That's happened a lot. So I show them how to like shrink the distractions and block out the noise and then focus where you need to. So that's a fun exercise. I like that one too.
Very cool. All things I wish I would have had when I played.
Yeah.
Sean, did you have any final questions? Keeping in mind time, we don't want to keep her too long.
Who's your favorite hockey player to watch right now?
I think Connor McDavid. I just saw his little move. Did you see that? The spinorama, and so he like knocked the guy over and just spun around and got the goal. So yeah, that's pretty cool. But
did you see the comments about that?
I didn't.
People are saying, "Poor man, he has a family. How could you do this to him? His kids will never let him live this down." It's getting bad. It's getting bad.
Yikes.
That's an interesting athlete right now, right? Like we talked earlier in the pod about you know, obviously I'm a homer, you know, go Avs, but for that game to happen, and then a lot of people had questions on how do you bounce back, how do you recenter yourself. He's a world-class athlete. He's one of the best athletes in the world. I'm not going to just say like at the sport, like he does command a certain level of respect. And so like for him to bounce back and have a performance like he did last night, I think that's probably like a really interesting character study in just mentality, right? Like that's a guy who, yeah, you have a bad game, you know, you're going to have to bounce back and come back and perform again. How do you do it? Like,
I think it's different at the pro level too, because there's so many stakes on the line. Like I did a podcast with Mike Zigomanis, who was on the Leafs. And he was like, you know, depending on what level you are in the pros, like you could be one mistake away from getting farmed out again, right? Like it's so intense. So, and like the press and the, you know, having to do interviews afterwards, like there's so much more. So yeah, I think you look at a professional athlete and think they're impervious to feeling things and experiencing things, but no, they go through the ringer too. Everybody's human. Everybody experiences the same roller coaster of emotions. So he's gonna, you know, that's why like most teams have people like me on their like to help them through these things, right? Because they got to be top performance. Yeah, they can't spiral down and then lose their best player for like 3 games in the NHL because Connor McDavid did a spinorama and he fell, right? Like you got to learn how to bounce back from that. I'm sure he's got the tools to do that. It's interesting. There was like some Instagram page I followed, and he kind of highlighted like all the different paths that pros take to get pro. And it's everybody just goes on this different journey. Like, so you might not feel like you're making it because, you know, you have to take 2 steps back and play down a team or whatever. But if you continue on the path and keep going and push through, you're going to gain the confidence, you know, and then learn from there, from doing it. So it's just interesting to see like the different paths people take.
Even for a client like ours, like Lucas, right? Stuff like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, even though he kind of, if you're looking from the outside in, right, it's like he did it. He played major junior. He got his draft. Like there's a long way to go for him still.
You got to take that one day at a time. That's especially this season. That being said, Amy, can you plug where people can come get your content and reach out to you and get in touch with you so they can start getting help? Absolutely.
So you can find me on Instagram. I think it's Instagram.com, Amy__Ford_. I also have School, so you can sign up for Flow State Unleashed on School. I have my website, flowstateunleashed.com. And yeah, so you can sign up for one-on-one. I also have the online course. It's a 10-week self-guided program. And I can also help your team. So there you go.
Well, we appreciate you joining us today and teaching me, at least, because I had a lot of mistakes I would have fixed, and hopefully this will help a ton of the players that we represent and players that just listen in on a weekly basis. It's something that, if you haven't realized by now, is an underrated skill and something that doesn't get as much attention as it should. So for those who need help, please reach out to her. She will be able to help you and help you get to that next level. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the time. And this is probably an ongoing conversation we're going to have with our clients.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it again.